Hi, welcome to Dr. Joe Academy reading and writing class. Before we get started, just to make sure you can hear me as well as see the Google Slides presentation, can you please type 1 in the chat? Okay, great. And let me go ahead and send in the link so everyone can join into the Google Slides. All right. Today we're going to be taking a look at a short story titled The Ones Who Walk Away from Amelas. And the topic kind of overlaying today's class as well as the short story is awakening and moral consciousness. They seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Amelas. This is a quote from the author, and it's also from the story itself. Most people live inside systems they did not create and do not fully examine. The question this story asks is what happens when you finally see the system clearly? And once you see it, what do you do? Moral awakening is not a comfortable experience. It is the moment when they have is it is the moment when the way you have been living stops being acceptable to you. Right? I'm sure everyone has that at different stages of your life. My apologies for that. But as I was saying, I'm sure everyone has some of those moments at different stages of their life. Because at no point in your life do you always agree with your past self. There's always something you might disagree with. And moral awakenings doesn't just have to be you doing something terribly wrong, right? It doesn't have to be like some crazy immoral act. It could even be something where you just feel as if you're not being true to yourself or you're not doing the best according to your own standards. And that itself can be a moral awakening that you experience. So the questions that are asked through the story is what it takes to reach that moment where you have that moral awakening and what kind of person walks away from everything once they do. Okay, and I also do see someone else has joined in through the iPad. I just want to make sure, is it a student? If it is, can you please let me know?
I'm Amy.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you. Can you please repeat that?
I'm Amy.
Oh, Amy. All right, thank you. All right, name changed. Okay, so today we're going to be reading The Ones Who Walk Away from Amelas. And it's a philosophical fable about a perfect city whose happiness depends on the hidden suffering of a single child and the few people who cannot accept that bargain. Some big questions to keep in mind is it possible to be truly happy while knowing others suffer so that you can be? What does it mean to walk away from a comfortable life before your conscience demands it? And where do the ones who walk away actually go? All right. Before we get into the reading material, I want to go through some discussion questions. So, what I'll do is assign each one to one of you. So, we'll start off first question to you, Amy, second question to you, Brady, and third question to you, Nathan. And right now, the time is 8:04. So, around 8:06, I'll ask everyone to share their response for their assigned questions. Okay, and if anyone does have any questions about the discussion questions itself, feel free to ask me. All right, we'll get started with the first question. Think of something in your own life, a system, comfort, a habit that you know comes at a cost to someone else. How do you live with that knowledge? Do you look at it or look away? Amy, can you go ahead and answer that question?
Well, sometimes I think that if you go outside and or like so you give money to let someone else to um like give you comfort or to like clean your house or something like that. Um, that actually I think that it does come at a cost because it's not the kind of work that you use your brains to work, and I don't think that the payment will be very high. So I I just live. I think I live with that knowledge because everyone lives with that knowledge, and I think I just look at it. I don't look away.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we do see a lot of those situations everywhere, almost like everything we have. It could be even the electronics we're using to do this class. It could have been made in really harsh conditions for the workers, like sweatshop level conditions, or even the clothes we're wearing could be coming from that same situation. Maybe even the food that we eat, it's dependent on exploiting agricultural labor, and so many different factors, even in social situations, for even like a school setting or maybe even a social setting, there will be a need for exclusivity. So someone is always kind of left out to really create that environment, right? Like just to create those social dynamics. And for some students' comfort, it's dependent on the exclusion of other students, right? So living in this type of world, we're able to see that openly in front of us, so much of these things are happening, and we have no choice but to almost look past it, or that's what we think. But slowly, even becoming more aware of it is a stepping stone in understanding that it is exactly isn't a fair system where someone is at the very bottom and they're being taken advantage of by a huge lot of people. All right, let's take a look at the second question. Have you ever had a moment of moral awakening, a moment when you suddenly saw something you had been ignoring and could not go back to not seeing it? What triggered it and what changed? Brady, can you go ahead and share your answer for the second question?
One time I went to an amusement park. I went to a roller coaster ride with a lot of my friends. And then after a few rides, I realized that my dad invited a person that we didn't really know really well. And like my friends were all like teasing him. And then I realized and also ignoring him. So I realized that if I were that kid, then I would probably feel bad. So I went on a roller coaster ride with him.
Okay. No, that's definitely a good story because you were able to look in the perspective of another person. Because obviously, no one would want to be a stranger. It probably feels worse to be a stranger than to have a stranger amongst friends. And that genuine moral awakening is more rare than people tend to believe, especially as you grow older. It's not something that you have often. I think as you're younger, you're always learning lessons, you're always picking up on different things because you're experiencing the world with open new set of eyes. But I think a lot of adults often forget to do that, and that itself can become a bad thing. If you don't remember that everyone is still always learning, then that can prevent yourself from learning a very important lesson that can help you later down the life or even currently within whoever's life. All right, let's take a look at the third question. Is it possible to be fully, genuinely happy while knowing that your happiness depends on someone else's suffering? Or does knowing always contaminate the joy? Okay, Nathan, can you go ahead and share your answer for the third question?
Um, I don't think it's possible to be fully happy because um we all have this feeling of guilt
that takes away that percentage that makes you happy. Um, Knowing that someone else is suffering uh does contaminate the joy, but it's a bad type of joy that should be contaminated.
Exactly. Um, I would agree. It's yeah, it's hard to live completely genuinely happy, but at the same time, in a lot of situations that we even live in, it's easy to forget. I'm not saying anyone should be critical of themselves, but just logically looking at it from a perspective, it's easy to almost forget the small things that make up the world around us and how everything functions because there's almost someone always at the back end who is suffering the most while getting paid the least, while there's someone at the other end receiving the rewards. And I'm not saying it's even us. There could be even people higher up, more powerful, who are receiving more rewards at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, there's always a clear imbalance. And of course, we're privileged enough to at least be discussing it in class, whereas other people will never even be able to dream about a situation like that. All right, let's take a look at the critical reading, which is going to be the short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Amelas. The author is a daughter of an anthropologist and a writer. She grew up immersed in stories about culture, consciousness, and the way societies are organized. She's known especially for science fiction and fantasy that operates as serious philosophical inquiry. She won the Hugo Award, the Nebula Award, the National Book Award, and the Kafka Prize. She believed fiction was the most powerful tool for moral imagination. Something she said of Vimelas is, I have a long, happy career of being used by teachers to upset students and make them argue fiercely about morality. That was exactly her intention. So as we read, we'll get to know more about this whole thing. The narrator speaks directly to readers and invites them to build Amelas in their imagination, making the reader complicit in the city's joy before revealing its cost. The premise is Amelis is a perfect, joyful city. Its happiness, every last bit of it, depends entirely on the suffering of one child kept alone in a basement. All right, I don't want to read too much into it, but we'll get into the story just about now. And here is a link to the PDF. I'll send this into the chat, but I'll get this pulled up on my side. Give me just 1 second. Okay. Right now, everyone should be able to see the screen with the story. If you are not, please let me know in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and let me know as well. The way we're going to do this is because some of these are not well organized into a paragraph, as we can see with the second page. So if your sentence does go over into the next page, just finish off at your sentence. So in this case, terrible boredom of pain. And the next person will continue on with their page. And yeah, we're going to apply that for even over here. You would just end off at less often. Other person will continue from over there. And yeah, let's get started with this. All right, Nathan, can you go ahead and read the first page?
The ones who walk away from Milas by Ursula K. Le Guin from the Wind's 12 Quarters. With a clamor of bells that set the swallow soaring, the festival of summer came to the city, O Milas, bright towered by the sea. The ring of the boats in the harbor sparkled with flags. In the streets between houses and red roofs and painted walls, between old moss-grown gardens and under avenues of trees, past great parks and public buildings, processions moved. Some were decorous, old people in long, stiff robes of mauve and gray, grave master workmen, quiet, merry women carrying their babies and chatting as they walked. In other streets, the music beat faster, shimmering of gong and tambourine. And the people went dancing. The procession was a dance. Children dodged in and out, their high calls rising like the shadows crossing flights over the music and the singing of the processions wound towards the north side of the city, where on the great water mellow caught the green fields, boys and girls, naked in the bright air, with mud feet and ankles and long lithe arms, exercised their restive horses before the race. The horses wore no gear at all but a halter without a bit. Their manes were braided with streams of silver, gold, and green. They flared their nostrils and pranced and boasted to one another. They were vastly excited, the horse being the only animal who was adopted by ceremonies as his own. Far off to the north and the west, the mountains stood up half encircling Omilas on her bay. The air of the morning was so clear that the snow, still crowning the 18 peaks, burned with white gold fire across miles of sunlit air under the dark blue of the sky. There was just enough wind to make the banners that marked the race course snap and flutter now and then. In the silence of the broad green meadows, one could hear the music winding through the city streets, farther and nearer, and ever approaching a cheerful, faint sweetness of time from time to time. From time to time, trembled and gathered together and broke out in the great joyous clanging of the bells. Joyous, how's one to tell about joy? How describes the citizens of Omilas? They were not simple folk, you see. They were happy. But we do not say the words of cheer anymore. All smiles have become archaic. Given a description as this one tends to make certain assumptions. Given a description such as this one tends to look next for the king, mounted on a splendid stallion, surrounded by his noble knights, perhaps in a golden litter borne by great muscle slaves, but there was no king. They did not use swords or keep slaves. They were not barbarians. I do not know the rules and laws of their society, but I suspect they were singularly few. As they did without monarchy and slavery, so they also got on without the stock exchange, the advertisement, the secret police, and the bomb. Yet I repeat that these were not simple folk, no, not dual cat shepherds, no savages, bland utopians. They were not like less complex than us. The trouble is that we get a bad habit encouraged by pedants and sophisticates of considering happiness was as rare stupid. Only pain is intellectual, only evil interesting. This is the treason of the artist, a refusal to admit the banality of evil and terrible boredom of pain.
Okay. And Brady, can you continue from if you can't?
If you can't lick, if you can't lick him, join him. If it hurts, repeat it. But to praise despair is condemn delight. To embrace violence is to lose hold of everything else. We have almost lost hold. We can no longer describe happy man, nor make any celebration of joy. How can I tell you about the people of Omelas? They're not naive and happy children, though their children were in fact happy. They were mature, intelligent, passionate adults whose lives were not wretched. Oh, miracle. I wish I could describe it better. I wish I could convince you. Omelas sounds in my words like a city in a fairy tale long ago and far away once upon a time. Perhaps it would be best if you imagine it as your own fancy bids. Assuming it will rise to the occasion, for certainly I cannot suit you all. For instance, how about technology? I think there would be for there would be no cars or helicopters in and above the streets. This follows the fact that the people of Omela are happy people. Happiness is based on just a discrimination of what is necessary. What is neither necessary or nor destructive. what is destructive in the middle category, however, that of unnecessary but undestructive. That comfort, luxury, exuberance, etc. They could perfectly well have the central heating, subway trains, washing machines, and all kinds of marvelous devices not yet invented here. Floating light sources, fuelless power, a cure for the common cold, or they could have done, or they could have none of that. It doesn't matter. As you like it, I incline to think that people from towns up and down the coast have been coming to the Omelas during the last days before the festival on very fast little trains and double-deck trams, and that the trains station of Omila is actually the handsomest building in town, though plainer than the magnificent farmers market. But even granted trains, I fear that Omela so far strikes some of you as goody-goody. Smiles, bells, parades, horses, blah. If so, please add an orgy. If an orgy would help, don't hesitate. Let us not, however, have temples from which issue beautiful nude princes or priests already half in ecstasies, ready to copulate with any man or woman, lover or stranger, who desires union with the deep Godhead of the blood. Although that was my first idea. But really, it would be better not have any temples in Omelas, at least not man temples. Religions, yes, clergy, no. Surely the beautiful nudes can just wander about offering themselves like divine suffles to the hunger of the needy and rapture of the flesh. Let them join the processions. Let the tambourines be struck above the copulations, and the glory of desire be proclaimed upon the gongs. And a not unimportant point, to let the offspring of these delightful rituals be beloved and looked after by all. One thing I know there is none of in Omelas is guilt. But what else should there be? I thought at first there'd be no drugs, but that is per intincal for those who like it. The faint, insistent sweetness of Druze may perfume the ways of the city. Druze, which brings great lightness and brilliance to the minds and limbs. And then after some hours of a dreamy languor and wonderful visions, blasts of the very arcane and innermost secrets of the universe, as well as exciting the pleasure of sex beyond all belief, and it is not habit forming for most modest tastes. I think there ought to be beer. What else? What else belongs in the joyous city? The sense of victory, surely, the celebration of courage. But as we did without clergy, let us do without soldiers. The joy built upon successful slaughter is not the right kind of joy. It will not do. It is fearful and it is trivial. Boundless and generous contentment, mag- magnanimous triumph felt not against some outer enemy, but in communion with the finest and fairest in the souls of men everywhere, and the splendor of the woman of the world's summer. This is what swells the hearts of the people in Omela. This victory they celebrate is that of life. I don't think many of them need to take cruise.
And Amy, can you read for most of the?
Most of the processions have reached the green fields by now. A marvelous smell of cooking goes forth from the red and blue tents of the
我没有
provision.
忙。
The faces of small children are amidably sticky. In the banyan gray beard of a man, a couple of crumbs of rich pasty are the start are entangled. The youths and girls have mounted their horses and are beginning to group around the starting line of the course. An old woman, small, fat, and laughing, is passing out flowers from a basket, and tall young men wear her flowers in their shining hair. A child of 9 or 10 sits at the edge of the crowd alone, playing on a wooden flute. People pause to listen, and they smile, but they do not speak to him, for he never ceases playing and never sees them, his dark eyes wholly wrapped in the sweet sing magic of the tune. He finishes and slowly lowers his hands holding the wooden flute. If that little private silence were a signal, all at once a trumpet sounds from the pavilion near the starting line, imperious, melancholy, piercing. The horses rear on their slender legs, and some of them neigh in an answer. Sober-faced, the young riders stroke the horses' necks and soothe them, whispering, "Quiet, quiet, dear my beauty, my hope." They began to form in rank along the starting line. The crowds along the racecourse are like a field of grass and flowers in the wind. The festival of summer has begun. Do you believe? Do you accept the festival, the city joy? No? Let me describe one more scene. In the basement, under one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, or perhaps in the cellar of one of its spacious private homes, there is a room. It has one locked door and no window. A little light seeps in dustily between cracks in the boards, second-hand from a cobwebbed window somewhere across the cellar. In one corner of the little room is a couple of mops with stiff, clotted, foul-smelling heads stand near a rusty bucket. The floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as cellar dirt usually is. The room is about 3 paces wide and 3 paces long and 2 wide. A mere broom closet or disused tool room. In the room, a child is sitting. It could be a boy or a girl. It looks about 6, but actually is nearly 10. It is feeble-minded. Perhaps it was born defective, or perhaps it has become imbecile enough, through fear, malnutrition, and neglect. It picks its nose and occasionally fumbles vaguely with its toes or genitals, as it sits hunched in the corner farthest from the bucket and the 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but it knows the mops are still standing there, and the door is locked, and nobody will come. The door is always locked, and nobody ever comes, except that sometimes the child has no understanding of time or interval. Sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens, and a person or several people are there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer in at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. The food bowl and the water jug are hastily filled. The door is locked, the eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child, who has not always lived in the tool room, can remember sunlight and its mother's voice. Sometimes speaks. "I will be good," it says. "Please let me out. I will be good." They never answer. The
It, it's fine. You can just end it off over there, and then I'll have the next person continue from here. Okay, Nathan, can you continue from the child?
Mm. The child used to scream for help at night and a cry a good deal, but now only makes a kind of whining, yee-haw, yee-haw, and it speaks left and left often. It is so thin that there are no calves in its legs. Its belly protrudes. It lives on a handful of cornmeal and grease a day. It is naked. Its buttocks and thighs are massive, faceted sores, and it sits in its own excrement continually. Now I know it is there that all the people of Omilas. Some of them have come to see, others are content to merely know it's there. They all know it has to be there. Some of them understand why, and some do not. But they all understand their happiness, their beauty of their city, their tenderness of their friendships, and the health of their children, the wisdom of their stars, the skill of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest, and the kindly weathers of the skies depend wholly on this child's abominable misery. This is usually explained to children why when they are between 8 and 12, whatever they seem capable of understanding, and most of those who come to see a child are young people, often capable, often though adult ones, or comes back to see a child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, these young spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight. They feel disgust, which they had thought themselves superior to. They feel anger, outrage, impotence, despite all the explanations. They would do something for the child, but there is nothing they can do. If the child were brought up of the sunlight out of that vile place, if they were cleaned and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done in that day, in that hour, in that prosperity and beauty of the life, Omilas would wither and and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all the goodness and grace for every life, and no milas for that single small improvement. To throw away the happiness of thousands for a chance of the happiness of one. That would be to let guilt within the walls indeed. The terms are strict and absolute. They would not even be a kind of word spoken to the child. If the young people go home in tears or in tearless rage, they have seen the child and face this terrible paradox. They may brood over it for weeks and years, but as time goes on, they begin to realize that even if the child could be released, it will not get as much good of its freedom. A little vague pleasure of warmth and food, no real doubt, but little more. It too degraded and imbecile to know any real joy has been afraid too long ever to be free of fear. Its habits are too uncouth for it and respond in humane treatment. Indeed, after so long, it would probably be wretched without walls about to protect it and its darkness for its eyes, no own excrement to sit in. Their tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality and to accept it. Yet it is their tears and anger, the trying of their generosity, and the acceptance of their helplessness, which are perhaps the true source of the splendor of their lives. There's no vapid, irresponsible happiness. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know compassion is the existence of the child and their knowledge of its existence. That makes the nobility of their architecture, the poignancy of their music, the profundity of their science. It is because of the child that they are so gentle with children. They know that if the wretched one were not there sniveling in the dark, the other one, the flute player, would make no joyful music as the young riders line up in their beauty for the race in the sunlight of the first morning of
And Brady, can you go ahead and read the last page?
Now, do you believe them? Are they not more credible? But there's one more thing to tell, and this is incredible. At times, one of the adolescent girls or boys who go to see the child does not want to go home or weep or rage, does not, in fact, home at all. Sometimes also a man or woman older falls silent for a day or two, then leaves home. These people go out on the street, into the street, walk down the street alone. They keep walking and walk straight out of the city of Omelas through the beautiful gates. They keep on walking through the farmlands of Omelas. Each one goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. Night falls. The traveler must pass down the village streets between the houses with yellow lit windows and go out on the darkness of fields. Each alone, they go west or north towards the mountains. They go on, they leave the meadows. They walk ahead into the darkness and they do not come back. The place they go to is a place that even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all. It is a possible that it does not exist, but but they seem to know where they're going. The ones who walk away from Omelas.
Okay, great. Let me go back over here. All right. So some key concepts that we've seen, or and even literary devices like symbolism or motifs that we might have seen, for example, would be the scapegoat. The child in the basement is a scapegoat in the classical sense, an innocent whose suffering absorbs the community's guilt and enables its prosperity. Le Guin draws on an ancient pattern to make a modern argument. A moral complicity. Simply knowing about an injustice and continuing to benefit from it makes you complicit in it. The citizens of Amelas are not cruel people, but they are complicit. Le Guin asks whether that distinction matters. Utilitarian logic. The story dramatizes utilitarianism's darkest implication. If the happiness of many outweighs the suffering of one, is the arrangement moral? Le Guin forces the reader to feel rather than calculate the answer. His narrator directly addresses the reader, inviting them to imagine Amelas themselves. This makes the reader partly responsible for building the city, therefore an unreliable narrator, and the party is also responsible for what is in the basement. The unspeakable place. The narrator says the place the walkers go toward is less imaginable than Amelas and may not exist. This is not a failure of imagination. It is Le Guin's point. There is no map for genuine moral freedom. All right, so before we get into the writing activities, we have some, or honestly, we'll see if we could come back to this. I do want to get more into the writing activities first. So I want everyone to choose one group in the story, the ones who stay or the ones who walk away. Based off that, write a short response arguing what their choice reveals about their moral consciousness and the cost of awakening. State clearly which group you are examining. Describe what their choice looks like in the story. That would be step one. Step two, make a claim. An example of a claim is the ones who stay represent a higher moral consciousness than they are given credit for. Their grief and their acceptance show a more honest engagement with reality than the clean departure of those who leave. Step three is to use the story. Reference specific details from the text. What does Le Guin say about how the citizens process seeing the child? What does she say what does she say about where the walkers go? And step four is to connect to the bigger idea. What does your chosen group reveal about what it means to truly awaken your moral reality? Is awakening always followed by action, or can witnessing honesty honestly be its own form of consciousness? All right, right now the time is about 8:40. We can work on this activity until 8:50. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions about this activity? All right, if anyone does have any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. Again, as mentioned, in 10 minutes, we are going to be taking up this activity. I'm only looking for a one paragraph response, but make sure all four steps are followed in that particular order. And if anyone has any questions at any point, feel free to ask. Okay, the time is about to be 8:50, so I would like everyone to send their responses into the chat or start pasting it onto the slides. The time is now 8:50, so everyone please do make sure to send in your responses. The goal is to get through all of the writing activities, so I would like everyone to send in their responses as soon as possible. Okay, I still haven't received anything yet, but okay, I just got one more response. I mean, one response. I didn't really get the goal, so I can write that much. Okay, Nathan, you could send in whatever you have written so far. But again, anyone who ever gets stuck on a question, please do make sure you ask for help. It is always too late to say it after the activity itself is over. All right, so I got one response. I'm gonna make the cutoff time until 8:52. Anything I don't get at 8:52, we won't be able to take up during class, just so we can move on to the next activity. So please do make sure you send in your responses. And if you did have any trouble with the question, please do let me know even after. We can discuss it just to kind of understand and be on the same page because it's really just talking about what we read through the story. All right, Nathan, can you go ahead and read your response?
Those who stay have a feeling of compassion and empathy. Those who walk away do not learn that there are others who need help and that there are not there that many are not as joyful as them.
Right, okay. What I would say is there's a significant like misreading of the story. I I would suggest it's really important that you do pay attention to the story itself because I feel like that's where a lot of the misunderstanding happened. An important part of the story is we see that there's two groups of people, those who stay and those who walk away. Those who stay are fine living in the city, no matter how much it may cost the child who is in the basement, as they describe, right? So even though there's someone who's suffering a cost, they don't seem to mind and they're staying. So they are not the people who have compassion and empathy. Those who walk away, we don't know what they're doing or even if they're acting on something, but what we know is at least they're representing that they feel as if there's some sort of betrayal going on by them just continuing to stay on there. So them choosing to leave is actually them having some type of compassion and empathy. So I'm going to write this over here. Um, Make sure to pay attention or during the readings. If there's any confusion, feel free to ask questions at any point after someone is done reading. So again, that goes out to everyone. If you are at any point confused during a story, if someone's done reading their page, you can feel free to ask what exactly happened over here. Like this person read this. I feel like it was a lot of different things happening, but I couldn't really comprehend what the main action was or the main event was. And I would feel more than glad to explain it. Right. So I do hope everyone does keep that in mind because I feel like that might have been the issue here. Some of you didn't comprehend the story, even based off the lack of responses. That's what I'm assuming. Okay. And I want to write over here the ones who stay are the ones who are able to ignore their guilt. Because what they say is even the child in the basement, the one who's enduring all this pain, for them to live this utopian lifestyle, they even say he is too damaged to be able to enjoy the goods. Like he wouldn't even be able to enjoy what's around him because he's too damaged as a person, as a being. So like they kind of Um, they kind of lie to themselves to make themselves feel okay with what's happening. Whereas the ones who leave are the ones who have compassion because they feel a sense of betrayal to the child in the basement. Okay. I'm also going to rate over here. In general, the response is far too short. You're only supposed to choose one of the groups. No evidence from the text is provided. No connection to a bigger idea. Okay, Brady, can you go ahead and read your response?
In this story, the people who stay and accept the bargain are likely know how brutal the conditions are in the basement, but try to make this situation in their head less worse than it actually is. For example, the city must have lots of people to stand out. So to stand out and leave must feel like it's not making a big enough difference. Plus, they're talking about how if they brought the child out, he would not live a good life anyways.
Okay. Good job with your response. Let's go over some changes. Let's start off with this sentence right here. Try to make the situation in their head less worse than it actually is. We could just write, try to make the situation in their heads seem less bad than it actually is. Let's write that instead. Because the previous sentence was awkward. Seems heads seem less bad than it actually is. Right? And let's cross this portion out. And then there was another sentence, same thing as sounded slightly awkward, kind of almost losing its meaning. The city must have lots of people, so to stand out and leave must feel like it is not making a big enough difference. Okay, instead we could write the city must have, let's just cross it out from here. The city must have so many people that leaving alone must feel like it would not make a big enough difference. Okay, and yeah, I do just want to add some points of improvement as well. I do think your observation about rationalization is genuinely good. You identify that citizens minimize the reality in their heads, which is exactly what Le Guin describes. But it would be great if you can connect your ideas to what it reveals about moral consciousness, right? About like how people, when we're talking about morals, about what people think is right and wrong, and whether we consciously or unconsciously make those choices. What does this psychological pattern tell us about how humans handle complicity? So complicity is think of like what's exactly happening in the situation. A lot of people going through with something that's not entirely good or something that's even terrible to say because of the fact that they're complying with what majority of the people are doing. Okay, yeah. And those are the main points of improvement I wanted to go through. Okay, and Amy, I did get your response. It was sent a little bit late, but I'm going to paste it in this time. But for next time, we are going to be mindful of the timers that we set. So if I do say 10 minutes, it's fine if you don't get to complete your response, but you could always just send in whatever you have done so far. Okay, thinking this is maybe added on to your end of your paragraph, I'll just add this in here. Okay, and Amy, can you go ahead and read your response?
I choose the group of people who walk away. The ones who walk away experience moral awakening when the moment they lay eyes on the child hidden in the basement. After this, they fully understand the price of their beautiful city. They cannot live comfortably with this knowledge, so they walk away without trying to save the boy or to let the citizens save the boy. They know that there's no perfect utopian city like Amala's waiting for them out there. There's only wilderness and mountains. When a child is aged 8 to 12, they must go and see the hidden child. Most of the children just cry and show their grief, but they still stay in Amalas after convincing themselves that this is for the greater good. They can't draw the line between genuine joy and the joy built on others' pain clearly. In contrast, the people who walk away can't accept this cruelly. This group teaches us that genuine moral awakening needs to have sacrifice. True awakening will let people take action, whether to free themselves from this burden or to help others be freed from this burden.
Really good job with your response. Yeah, this is a really well-written response, might be some of your best writing that I've seen so far in this term as well. I'm looking to see if there's no points of improvement, but there was one sentence that I wanted to make a correction with. Here. When they lay the moment they lay eyes, I think there was just a little typo, so we could just write when they lay eyes. So let me just cross all of this out. When they lay eyes, we'll just leave it at that. And yeah, really good job with this, Amy. And I don't really have any points of improvement. It was just a small correction over there. All right, we're going to be moving on to the next activity, which is an argument writing activity. I do think it'll be good if you focus on this, finish this, take this up together, and then maybe in the last couple of minutes, we could work on the discussion questions because we would work on this for at least about 15 minutes just because of the amount of requirements for this activity. So the question is walking away from Amelas a moral act, or is it simply a refusal to engage with the reality that everyone who benefits from an unjust system must face? Again, they're asking about that city, right? This utopian city that we read about in this story where everything is so perfect, but there's a child in the basement who's suffering. And because of his suffering is the only reason the city is as perfect and as amazing as it is. So they're asking, is walking away actually considered to be a good moral act? Are they actually doing something? Or is it good even in terms of a moral consciousness, like how you morally feel about yourself? Is it a good choice? Or is it a refusal to engage with the reality that everyone who benefits from an unjust system must face? So for those who stay, they're saying that by walking away, you're refusing to engage with the reality, which is that you have no choice but to benefit from this unjust system. And based off this, you're going to write a focused argument paragraph, take a clear position, and use specific details from the story and connect your argument to a real situation in the world you know. So to break this down, we start off with the claim, state your positions in the first sentence is walking away, moral courage, moral abandonment, or something that resists both labels. Be specific. So here, it's not just one or the other. You get to make a choice about what exactly that action is, the walking away action. Then is when you bring in the evidence. You reference what Le Guin actually says about those who walk away, their silence, their solitude, their destination. What do these details argue about the nature of their choice? Evidence 2. Bring in a real world parallel. This could be a historical figure, a social situation, or a personal experience where someone faced a similar choice between complicity, so going with the majority, where even when something feels wrong, or departure, to walk away from that situation. Reasoning. Explain what your two examples reveal together. What does the comparison show about moral awakening, about what moral awakening actually demands of a person? Concession. Acknowledge the strongest version of the opposing view. If you argued walking away is moral, admit what it fails to do. If you argued it is abandonment, admit what it gets right. So I would say the first four are a must. The last one, if you have a time, it's almost kind of like a bonus thing that you could add on. But the first four, I'm definitely looking for. So please do make sure to include that in your paragraph. All right, so right now the time is 9:05. We'll be working on this activity for 15 minutes until 9:20. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions about this activity? Okay, if anyone does have any questions at any point, feel free to ask me. Again, in 15 minutes, we'll be taking up this activity. Just wanted to give a reminder that in 8 minutes we will be taking up this activity. Okay, the time is about to be 9:20. Everyone can go ahead and start sending in their responses. Okay, Amy, can you go ahead and read your response?
I'm sorry, I think I wrote it on the iPhone and I haven't pasted it over completely. Like I wrote it like it
Yeah,
isn't in a full paragraph.
no worries. I just pasted it in right now. Can you go ahead and read it?
Walking away from omelets is a moral act. It is neither moral courage nor moral abandonment, but something that resists both labels. It is the knowledge that the whole city lives on the boy's pain, and they cannot take to that knowledge. Those who walk away don't tell anyone where they're that they are going to do so. They always go alone without others to be with them, and they don't have a clear destination. They can't see another beautiful utopian city waiting for them. They only see wilderness. These tell us that the nature of the choice is actually a moral act because they don't tell any friends or relatives about this. They don't want anyone to stop them because they cannot be stopped, and they don't want to waste time being stopped. They're determined to go alone because they don't think that others could help them on this trip, and they don't want to bring others in if they don't want to go. Their unknown destination tells us about the dangers that they may that lay ahead of the trip. They choose the dangers over the happiness, which tells us that they really know they really suffer from the idea of a child hidden away in the basement for the benefits of loss and loss of others.
Okay. Really good job with your response. I just want to go through some small corrections to start off with. I did notice some words were accidentally capitalized, so let's start off with that. And then while we're here, there was also a sentence, their unknown destinations tell us about the dangers that may lay ahead of their trip. Beyond just the extra may that we removed, I would also, yeah, I would also remove this portion and replace it just because I feel like it kind of misreads a portion of the story. Instead, we could write their unknown destinations tells us about the dangers that there is no existing path toward genuine moral freedom. Okay, and I'm going to write over here the unknown destination is not about physical danger, but instead it represents the absence of any map for life outside the system. So just the idea that there is no plan for what can be beyond the system. Okay, and I also did want to change, see if I could find it. It was just a small little change. All right. It's fine. If I do see it again, I'll put it. It wasn't too serious, but I did want to include some points of improvement here as well. I think your opening claim is the strongest part, especially when you write something that resists both labels. The rest of the paragraph never fully delivers on that opening statement. So, or that opening claim. After making that claim, you should explain what it means for something to resist both labels and why that matters for understanding moral consciousness. So I'm going to write that over here. After your opening claim, you should explain what it means for something to resist both labels and why that matters for understanding moral consciousness. Okay, yeah, those are the main changes I wanted to make. And then let me go ahead and paste in your response, Nathan. And Brady, I still have not received anything from you. Okay, Nathan, can you go ahead and read your response?
I think that when people walk away, it shows that they have courage to be compassionate and realize their wrongdoings. The choice is very brave and they show guilt.
Okay. Again, with this response, it's very hard for me to give feedback with low effort responses like this. So it is important that at least some type of effort is put in. I'm just going to include over here this response is too low effort for any feedback to be provided. I'm just going to make a list of everything that's missing just so you could come back to this and finish it off. So again, please do make sure it's not just bare minimum participation because that is really not participation at all. Responses at this level definitely need to be further analyzed. Oh, and thanks for letting me know Brady's not here as well. Seems he did leave a little bit early, but Nathan, please, I do want to see improvement for next week's class. So there's no evidence, there is no developed argument. Of course, two sentences cannot fulfill this activity. There's no connection. Moral consciousness. I'm going to write, go back to the story, read the final section, and re-attempt this response. And in general, I would say that even for the first part, maybe even read the entire story again one more time and try out the first question as well as the second question. All right, so we do have a creative writing activity here. What I'm going to do is put this under, okay, or I'll just leave it right over here and label it off as homework. I'm just going to briefly introduce it and then introduce the writing assignment as well. So you're going to be writing a first person narrative. And the topic is you are one of the ones who walk away from the Amelas. Begin the moment you make the decision. Do not look back. All right. So you're going to be writing a story based off that. The weekly writing assignment is to write a literary analysis essay arguing what Le Guin's story reveals about the relationship between moral awakening and moral action. Does seeing clearly always require you to act, or is conscious, honest witnessing a form of moral response in itself? The requirements are to take a clear, arguable position in your opening paragraph about what the story argues. Analyze both groups in the story, those who stay and those who walk away. Bring in one real-world example. It can be historical, personal, or contemporary. Make sure it illuminates the same tension. Address and refute the strongest counter-argument in your position or to your position. Close with a statement about what you believe genuine moral awakening demands and whether Le Guin's story offers an answer or refuses to. The expectations are that this is about 600 to 800 words. It is mandatory. Make sure this is a typed, polished essay posted on the forum by next class. Even though I'm assigning the homework, I would say this is higher priority. Every paragraph must advance the argument. So make sure you do remember that when writing your essay. Don't have a paragraph in there that's dedicated for summary, or even majority of it is summarizing the story. That is something that needs to be avoided. And in terms of the evidence, quote or closely reference specific lines. General statements are not analysis. All right, before we end off class, does anyone have any questions about what we covered today, or the homework, or the writing assignment? Okay, the time is 9:30. I'm going to go ahead and dismiss the class. I hope everyone has a great week ahead of themselves. Bye.